Today we are going to start off with our series, and throughout the next couple of weeks, we've got a few people who are doing amazing things in the community coming to Gracegate, and they're just going to share a bit of what's happening in Auckland. I guess when we come to church on a Saturday, sometimes we don't always see what other people are doing in our community. And we really want to champion anyone who's doing something really good. And today we have the privilege of having Ross here. Some of you might know Ross. He's from Heart for Youth. And I'm just going to be asking him a few questions. So Ross, can you join us? Let's give him a big hand. Thanks, Ross. I'll grab this mic for you. All right, Ross, you can have a seat. How many of you know Ross? Can you put your hand up? Okay, so there's quite a number, but there's also a number who don't know who Ross is and what this logo is behind us, Heart for Youth Trust. Can you share a bit more about what that is and who you are, Ross?
There we go. Hi. Thanks, Wesley. Thanks so much for having me at Awesome Gracegate. It's always a great privilege to be here. So, my name's Ross. Heart for Youth Trust is really an extension of my own journey, I guess. That was not a pretty one as a young person growing up. Drug and alcohol addiction, very young age, until a cataclysmic event, age 17, saw me standing quite close by Taurota Road. Over a young guy just been run over and killed by my girlfriend at the time. And from that, fast forward, coming to faith, finding Jesus, but some very significant people that mentored me. They didn't know that that's what they were doing at the time. I didn't know that that's what they were doing at the time, but that's what they were doing. So I found mentoring, I found discipleship, obviously, in the church. It's just been an extension of my journey, working with young people, and really just seeing the incredible effect of a little bit of love. It's like kind of throwing ink into water, it just goes like that. And I could give you many, many examples of that. So, for me, it was just sharing that love, reaching out to young people, and just finding not only the beauty and effect that it would have with those young people, but the actual incredible self worth and encouragement for ourselves. And so my wife and I thought, let's just find some other adults that would want to help us with that. So we formed Heart for Youth Trust. We're in our 6th year now, and we're basically a mentoring organisation. So we simply recruit volunteer adults in community to mentor kids from community, youth and young adults. So I know that was a big intro, but we're big.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Ross, I want to go back a few lines that you just shared. You said when you were 17, you went through a serious, I guess, misery, difficult season in your life. And now you I know that Ross works with a lot of people who are going through significant, difficult seasons in their life. Do you think tell me a bit about that experience.
So it's a bit of a long story, but in short, due to the circumstances, I processed my inaction, which if I wound that back a couple of hours, it would have been as simple as picking up my girlfriend and instead of letting her drive or calling a taxi. And so what I saw was a lot of inaction on my behalf, which resulted in somebody else dying. So even though I wasn't driving that car, and that was obviously times it by 1,000 for my girlfriend, that was a horrific situation. At the time, no one actually stopped to ask me how I was doing, and so I just internalized all of that. And really for around about 2 years, I literally blame myself for the death of another young person, because there was a lot of, if I had done this, if I had done that, things would have been different. And of course that wasn't the way, but that's the way I processed it. So having and it was one thing to have peers, and this is, we see young people today and they're incredibly tight. The schools right now that have banned hugging once the bell goes. The bell goes and everyone's got to hug each other and high-five each other until we see you in 40 minutes' time. And it's like they're going on an overseas trip. So there's incredible bonding that goes on between young people. But where the problem I see is a huge disconnect between young people and adults. And so all the statistics say, and I might just add, I've been very privileged and blessed over the last year to also be running Heart for Youth, but also I'm now pretty much the main national trainer now for the New Zealand Youth Mentoring Network. So as part of that, I learnt the statistics. I knew the truth, but now I've learnt the statistics to go with that and the research. And so, having people outside of your own peer group. So I got a lot of support from my peers, which was awesome, but they just didn't really have that next level that those adults had for me as mentors. So, I've experienced that firsthand. I'm incredibly passionate about it. We work predominantly outside the church. We present as a secular organisation, so we kind of don't get the religious tag. I mean, everyone knows I'm a faith guy. All the police down the road here, they know about you guys because I tell them, and it's a beautiful thing. So, but yeah, having that person outside, for me, that was just massive, and so. Yeah, that's our kind of thing, is just letting the church know as well, not just outside of church, but in church as well.
Ross, this series that we started, we said we want to package it in such a fun, creative way, let it look all nice and flashy and colorful, but at the root of it, we actually want to address and speak about topics we, I guess, kind of shift away from at times at church. And today we're going to kick it off with bullying. And I think bullying, you would know, has a huge impact on so many people's lives. Could you just share, being part of Heart for Youth, do you have some stories or some events that have happened that you could share with us as a community and what the impact is of bullying?
Yep, absolutely. If I can sort of back up a bit, I guess, I'm no expert, I'm no professional, and I just observe life and I observe young people. And it's interesting, we would think that in these times of, so much sort of more social awareness and being in tune into what's okay and what's not okay, you would think that bullying, would be way down here. And of course it's not, that people are really, really being affected. And, there was an old adage growing up, a saying where, we used to say sticks and stones won't break my bones. Is that what it was? Will break my bones, but names will never hurt me. And of course we know names do hurt us, but, I know for a fact in Christ, if I'm sure of my identity of who I am, then those names won't hurt me because I know who my name is and I'm a child of God. And so for obviously young people outside a community, I think part of the problem is young people not just being bullied, but being so severely affected. And that's the difference. And part of that, I think, comes from, the upside of our culture is that, we are more sensitive. We're talking a lot about what it means to empathize, what it means to feel what another person's feeling, but which is great. That's a good thing. But what we need with that as well is we need resilience. Yeah. So what I see is a whole lot of young people almost hypersensitive, which in a sense is really good, but that can be really overwhelming if you don't have the other side to create a bit of kickback. Does that make sense? Yeah. So we're really super sensitive. And unfortunately, what we don't have is young people don't have the tools of resilience, bouncing back, getting through those times. And so, I've seen some heartbreaking stories. I've seen kids quit school. We fostered a young man many years ago. He was in a special needs school. He was just in that interim stage where all he wanted to do was go to mainstream. We got him in a local school that catered for young people who had a bit of autism. He was severely dyslexic, and he was just so excited, to go to a mainstream school and just sort of have a sense of normality. And we organised that, and it was so great. And just for a short time, it was fantastic. And then that just turned, and it was all because of bullying. And within 6 months, he was done. He was dusted. He didn't want to go back to school. And his thing is that he couldn't spell, and he would get bullied And it got around. There was kids that didn't even know him that would pick on the bus and just say, "Hey, spell cat," and they didn't even know him. And he just it got around. He's a kid that can't spell, and he was sort of late teens by that time. So it was just incredibly heartbreaking. I took that on as a parent, and I'm sure there's many here that can relate to those sorts of scenarios. It's the toughest thing, isn't it, to be, to love a young person, to see them going through that, and that was terrible. But the flip side of that again is the significance of, the support that young man's had through my own family and through Heart for Youth. I'm glad to say he's thriving, absolutely thriving. He's employed, he lives on his own and lives independently. We help him a bit, I know other kids that we're supporting right now in Heart for Youth that left school, been to multiple schools, that carried on the bullying. We run a support group for young people with anxiety and depression, those sorts of things, and we just connected a young lady, 17, hasn't been to school for 3 years, and her mum was so excited. She met a mentor, and then her mum just said to me, "Right, and now maybe we can get her some friends." And it's a 17-year-old girl, and I said, what do you mean by that? And we'll call her Joanne. She said, "Well, Joanne just has no friends." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "She has no friends." And I said, "You mean no friends?" She said, "Joanne has no friends." So right now, Joanne has a mentor with Heart for Youth. She has a support group with 8 or 9 other people similar, and we did that again on Thursday night. I ran into her mum. I said, "How did Joanne go?" She said, "Oh, she loved it, So it's not hopeless, It's not hopeless. It seems overwhelming, but it's not hopeless, and it can be flipped on its head with just a bit of love and care and compassion.
Awesome. Ross, as a church, we love what you're doing. When I joined Gracegate,
I love what you guys are doing.
we got in touch with Ross, and I've been through the whole mentorship program. A lot of our staff have. Some of the volunteers at Gracegate have gone through, and some are mentoring some guys as well. But Ross, for us as a church today, we want to acknowledge what you're doing. We want to encourage you, and we want to say keep flying the flag high. Yep. I've read some of the stories and some of the prayers that you put up on Facebook. There are some really difficult seasons, and unfortunately some people even take their lives. And Ross, you're leading the way. You're doing an incredible job, and as a church we just want to support you. Just say keep going. I know there's exciting stuff happening for Heart for Youth. Could you just share that with our community as well today?
With what we're doing?
Yeah, and where you guys are headed.
Oh, yeah, so I pinch myself at times. So, yeah, nationally we're spreading, but probably one of the most exciting things, and I believe it was just a totally ordained God moment. I happened to be in India, of all places, last year, and I even got over to the Middle East and Oman and shared a bit of my story and the journey of Heart for Youth and the power of mentoring. And I met a young lady, an American lady, who was at the same organisation I was at in India, shared what we were doing. And she's from San Jose, California, and she came up and she said, "Ross, how would you like to start Heart for Youth in the USA?" And I said, "No, well, I won't, but you can." And so I actually literally got a photo from her this morning, and Heart for Youth USA has just been incorporated. It was really cool. Oh man, it's just so ridiculous. I'll be over there at the end of this year training some people there, and they'll be working with a lot of Hispanic young people from Mexican communities, and they'll be sponsoring a government-run organisation that has 300 young people living in, being educated and supported, and so we're running a pilot program there. And it's just so timely because we've got to a point where we've developed our organisation, and it's been a lot of hard work, as anyone knows that does that sort of thing. And we've got to the point where we can almost hand over what we've created with God's blessing to a sort of a turnkey operation. It's great to be able to do that. We're really open as an organisation nationally. We support other youth mentoring organisations so openly. We do things that nobody else did. I do that which I wish people had done to me when I started Heart for Youth. I was so excited, and I just thought everyone else in community would be excited, and other organisations, and even other organisations that I'd helped, been in faith and in church. When I told them I was starting a charity, I thought they'd be so excited, and a lot of doors actually closed, and sadly there's a lot of competitiveness because it's around funding. So we flipped that. We're ridiculously open. We'll help any other organisation. We refuse to see competition. We share our policies and procedures, and people just go, wow, who does that? And it's like, well, we do that, and we just see that as an extension of, God's blessed us. We're going to pass that on. So, yeah, it's pretty cool, and we're just rocking on, doing what we're doing. We try and support 25 to 30 young people every year, and it's exciting. Yeah, real cool.
Ross, if anyone's sitting in the audience today, they want to get involved, or they want to just find out more about Heart for Youth, how can they do that?
Yep, sure. So if you Googled Heart for Youth, you'd find us. I've got a card here. You can come and see me afterwards. We've got a training coming up. So we're usually doing 2 trainings a year coming up in October. You're welcome to join us for that. There's no obligation. What we say is, look, come and do the training, see how you go after that, and, even if you weren't going on to mentor, all our evaluation says it's a phenomenal course. It's an amazing personal development course. It'll make you a better parent, better grandparent, a better human, a better boss, better co-worker. So yeah, we'd love to have you join us at no obligation. So yeah, cool.
Awesome. Thanks, Ross. Before you leave, I'm going to invite some of the young people in our community just to come and stand up on stage with me. And we just want to pray for you. Is that okay?
Awesome.
Can we do that?
Hey, can I just say, Wesley, what I said earlier, there's that thought, it takes a village to raise a child, and I'm so grateful for Gracegate. What you guys are doing is quite unique. I see little Hemi over there. It just brings warmth to my soul. Cameraman, am I looking good, Hem? Am I good, mate? Yeah, cool, we're good. Hope you get my good side there, mate. And we can't do it on our own, and it's just, I feel, when I think of Gracegate, I feel support. That's exactly how I feel, and I feel, whenever I ask for help, it's always yes, and it's just great, to see, the Bible says the church should be a city set on a hill that cannot be hid, and Gracegate's salt and light, and I'm really, my wife and I are really appreciative of what you guys do. So yeah, thank you as well on behalf of Heart for Youth to Gracegate.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ross. Can I invite some guys up here, and we're just going to lay hands on Ross and just pray for the next season and everything he's doing in young people's lives. God, today we thank you so much for Ross, and we thank you just for his willingness to just be used, just to say, hey, God, just use me, not to make a point, but to make a difference in so many young people's lives as well as their families. And I just want to pray that you'll continue to protect Ross. I pray that you'll continue to give him the strength and the perseverance he needs during seasons that are really difficult. And God, I pray that we'll continue to see so many young people just finding life, finding hope, finding their significance, finding value, just through through Heart for Youth, God. So we pray for an extra blessing on Ross, his family, and everyone engaged in Heart for Youth. So we pray that today, trusting in your name. Amen. Thanks so much, Ross. Can we give him a hand?
The whole sticks and stones break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Just like Ross said, it's just crazy. It'd be so nice if that was true. I don't even know who would come up with such a thing because it's so wrong. And but I like the last line in that. It says, maybe words could be less to do with hurt and pain and more to do with beauty. And maybe that's what we can look at today. So before we do, I just want to play a little game with you guys to shake that tenseness from the dance and get you guys smiling again. And so I'm going to say a line, and you guys finish it all together, okay? So first up, here we go. To be or not to be? That is the question. Right, okay, next one. Luke, I am. Yeah, I think you guys need to do it a bit more in the voice, but that's all right. I'll let you off. Next one. An apple a day keeps the? Yes, nice. Next. Slow and steady wins the race. You guys are good at this. Okay, next one. With great power comes great responsibility. That was the hardest one in there. You guys got it. Okay, I think this is the last one. There's no place like Grace Gay. Woo! Nice. Okay, that's cool. You guys are awake. I had another one, but I thought it would be too hard for you guys. But maybe I'll test it. Are you guys ready? Okay. This isn't common to everyone, but it should be common to a Grace Skater. So, love does. Wow, that's good. All right, well then I don't need to keep preaching if you know that one. Okay, isn't it funny how all of us remember little sayings like these and nursery rhymes from when we were younger and stuff, and we can remember words, and yet people say to us, words don't really matter. And I think that can't be the truth, because all of us can relate to a time when we've had some harsh words spoken to us and it is just stuck. Even from a young age, I can remember being 6, having something told to me that is fully stuck in me, and I'm sure you guys can remember the same thing. I want us to talk about that childhood rhyme today and talk about that words can mean something more than just hurt, and it doesn't have to be that way. So I've got one more game for you guys before we go into it. So I'd like you all to stand up. All right. So if this relates to you, you can take a seat, okay? So you can sit down if you were ever made fun of for some reason at school. Some people are sitting down, all right? You can sit down if you've ever been beaten up by somebody, okay? You can sit down if you've ever been somewhere in a workplace where there's been a misuse of power and someone has treated you poorly. Okay, you can sit down if you've ever been verbally, socially, or physically abused in some way, even on cyber. You can sit down if you have ever witnessed bullying to somebody else. And you can sit down if you've ever made a joke that actually went too far and offended somebody. Guilty as charged, Nick. Okay, cool. So that just shows that actually bullying affects all of us, and that is why today we're going to be speaking about it, okay? It's relevant to all of us, and we just saw that. All of us have experienced it in some way, shape, and form, and today we're starting our brand new series, like you've heard. Life isn't always rainbows and unicorns, and if I told that to my 5-year-old niece, she'd be heartbroken. She just had her 5th birthday party 2 weeks ago, and it was a unicorn party, and everything in her world is fluffy and pink. So the truth is, I wish that was the truth for all of us, but in reality, it's just not. We go through times and seasons in life when there isn't always rainbows and there's not always unicorns, and that's why it's important for us to speak about. So, if you're new here or if you haven't been in a little while and you're like, what is this weird group of people with unicorns and rainbows, then I just want to tell you guys, you're actually in the coolest place you should possibly be on a Saturday morning. And the next month is going to be looking at different topics that all of us face and situations we find ourselves in that just aren't ideal, and that's why it's important for us to actually speak about them so we can address it and we can live the best life possible. So we're a bunch of people who aren't perfect, but that are here for each other. We're journeying with each other, and we want to journey with you as well. So join us for this series. It's going to be fantastic. So as we just saw, bullying affects all of us in some way, and it's a huge issue in our country, like we heard from Ross as well. It's actually a huge issue in our community, and it's even an issue in our church. When you think of bullying, put your hand up if the first thing you think of is school. Yeah, almost all of us. And there is a big, bullying is a big issue in schools, but that's actually not even the half of it. It happens in so many more places than just that. And you don't have to look too far to see that bullying's an issue even in the workplace, in uni, in sports teams, in families as well. And so we're going to look at it from a perspective for all of us, not just those who are in school. So here's some statistics for you. And I like to think of these statistics as not just numbers, but think of them as actual people that you and me know. Okay, so the first one. There's 4 out of 9 students in New Zealand get bullied throughout their school life. So that's pretty much half the kids that go to school. And it's probably half of us from when we went to school as well. And this is our next one. Nearly 270,000 adults were targets in the past 12 months for cyberbullying, with incidents ranging from messages encouraging people to harm themselves or threats for their own lives. Next one. There was a survey done, so as it's saying here, and actually New Zealand got ranked the second worst country in the developed world for workplace, and we were second to Latvia. I didn't even know much about that country. But that's pretty bad if you ask me. That's terrible. And 14% of young people report being hit or physically harmed on purpose by an adult at home just in the last 12 months. That's a big number of New Zealand. Family violence happens to 525,000 New Zealanders who are harmed every year. That is a heck of a lot of people. I think that when we look at these stats, it's easy for us to kind of just think, that's numbers, or they're big numbers and that's that. But if you think about the people you know, if 4 out of 9 students are getting bullied at school, then that's definitely somebody you know. And the same as if 1 in 5 people are getting harassed at work, then that's bound to be somebody you know, if not you yourself. And it made me think of it like this. Like, we are a box of crayons, and from the outside, everything looks awesome and great and bright and colorful, like this rainbows. But when you think of each person who's getting attacked and made to feel worthless, that they're getting broken, and they are getting their life shredded by other people who they're saying they are at school, and just by maybe the way they look and how they are at work. There's so many, it's just horrible to think of what people are going through, that we're no longer seen as this perfect box of crayons, but we're seen as somebody who's broken, who's damaged, who's not really any good for anything anymore. And it's actually just heartbreaking to see. And you guys might think, well, that's okay because it doesn't really relate to me. But as we saw before when we all stood up, it actually does relate to all of us in some way. So when we think about it, we think sometimes not so close to home. But one of my privileges of working at Gracegate is actually to be one of the youth leaders here. And so I get to be a part of our Radiate youth group, our high school youth group, and some of our children's ministries. And I get to meet and journey along with some of our young people. And you wouldn't believe how many young people come to me looking so great like this on the outside, but then they tell me that they're actually getting left out at school and people are being mean to them. And that in their sports team, people are picking on them just because they look different or they're not as great as the others in their team. And these are just people in our own church that are constantly telling us, things aren't going well at school. They're getting left out. They eat lunch by themselves, or they spend their lunch in the bathrooms, or just hiding in the library because people aren't being nice to them. And that's in our own church. And it actually breaks my heart to hear that, because we think, here everyone looks great, but the reality is they're all going through tough times too. So we want to look at what we can do about it, how we can fix this. But before we do, we need to look at what bullying exactly is. So bullying, statistics say, is in 4 main things. So the first thing bullying is physical. Most of us can think of that. It's someone actually beating someone else up, punching, spitting at them, tripping them on purpose, physically hurting them or their stuff. but there's more to it. So there's also verbal, and that is when someone speaks down to someone else, speaks hurtful words to them, and it can be verbal, like mocking them because of who they are, what they believe in, their skin color, their weight, their race, their sex, whatever it may be, and it's just hurtful words that really stick. And then there's social, and this is to do with people's friendship, their relationships, and also it's a lot to do with their status and who they are. And then there's cyber. So things used to just be bad enough on their own, and then somehow we brought cyber into it. And now people can get bullied day or night. Even if they're at home by themselves, safe in their own room, they can get bullied by somebody who's behind a screen, ripping them to shreds, saying things to somebody they don't even know and they wouldn't have the confidence to say in person. So there's these 4 kinds of bullying, and it's horrible to hear these. And we can all probably think of a time when we've had one of these done to us, but these aren't anything new. If we look at the Bible, we've got a whole lot of examples in there as well. And so some of the examples was that there was Joseph. There was a guy called Joseph and his brothers, and Joseph's brothers were so jealous of him that they physically beat him up. They threw him in a pit, ripped his coat off him, and then they sold him as a slave. You might be in a situation at the moment with your family that your siblings or your parents or somebody is being physically abusive to you like that, and it's actually not normal and it's not okay. And there was also another story in the Bible about a guy called Samson, and his wife, Delilah, she actually lies to him constantly and betrays him to try and trade him in. And maybe you're in a situation like that at home where your spouse is just constantly betraying you, lying to you, and talking down to you, and that's not normal either, and that's not okay. There's another example in the Bible about a guy called Saul. His name later gets changed to Paul, and he was actually the bully himself. He was bullying these Christians just because they believed different from him, and he would actually physically beat them up to the point where he killed many of them. He spoke words to them that would have just stuck. And, that's not normal either, to have to, just because you believe something, to get bullied. That's not right either. And that was happening all in the Bible. So that tells us that bullying isn't actually something new. It's a long-standing problem. It happens in so many environments, as we've heard about, not just in our schools, but in our homes, in our workplaces, in our unis, in our sports teams, and even in our families, which is the saddest thing. If you're exposed to bullying in some way, whether you're being bullied or you're just seeing it happen, there's all these negative effects it will have on you. And last year we took our Radiate youth group, so these guys are 9 to 12 years old, and we took a whole bunch of them to this movie called Wonder. Have any of you seen the movie Wonder? Yeah, it's such a cool movie. And we were in there, and so many of the kids in the cinema, not just our own youth group, but so many kids in there in that age were actually crying because it was so relevant to them and they could relate to it. And that was just so heartbreaking to think about. And so the movie, for those of you who haven't seen it, is about this kid called August, or Augie for short. And he's a quirky dude. Here's a picture of him. He's a quirky, witty guy in the movie. He's an intermediate-aged kid. He's 10, and he has a facial deformity. And it's so sad because in the movie he gets bullied a lot, and it's actually a reality for loads of kids that age. And I think that's why when we took them to the cinema, we weren't really expecting them to react the way they did, but they reacted because they saw themselves in this dude. And he gets bullied by a lot of people, but when this movie actually came out last year in the States, they did a survey, and 70% of people who were being bullied at this time in America were actually not telling anyone about it by now because it was embarrassing for them, or they've been going through it for so long that they just silently suffered brutally by themselves. And when this story came out last year, another guy spoke up, and his name is Michael Goodman. And I think we have a picture of him. Here he is. And he spoke out at this time. He has been one of those guys silently suffering. And he spoke out and he shared his story because of the movie. He actually has the exact same disease that the kid in the movie had, but he has it in real life. And he shared his story, and it went viral because he said when he was in senior high, he got bullied so badly that he tried to commit suicide twice. And now since then, he's studied, and he actually became a pediatrician, and he's won a lot of awards, and he's a fantastic doctor. But he said that even now he still gets bullied just because of the way he looks. He gets verbally bullied by loads of people, including parents who are saying that he can't operate on their kids, even though they need it, just because of the way he looks. It's so sad because he's a fantastic doctor, and he's studied hard, he's won lots of awards, and he's great at it, and actually he's called to it. But because of the way he looks, people bully him even still. So that was something that just came out from that movie, but it was a reality. And I thought about it because it doesn't just happen to kids, as we've realized, and it doesn't just happen to people who look different. It happens to everybody, just like you and me, ordinary people. We begin to believe these lies that we are told about ourselves, and it starts to affect our confidence. If you've been bullied or you've seen someone who is, you see they withdraw a little bit from themselves, and they sort of don't speak up as much. They don't like their same hobbies or interests that they used to. Their value and their identity begins to be formed by what someone else says they are, by other people saying, you're weak, you're a nerd, you're a geek, you're a teacher's pet, you're annoying, you're just another addict, you're just a junkie, you're irresponsible, you're young, you're immature, you're stupid, or you're the odd one out. Has anyone been called any of those things before? Yeah, we all have. But then we start to believe those to a point where we almost actually start bullying ourselves because we restrain ourselves and we start to believe them as truth. Why do we do that? And why do we be the people who discriminates against other people or bring them down? Just because they look different to us, or maybe they have a different accent to us, a different skin color, or a different belief. As Christians, we still do this, and we're called to love everybody always. So we can see that there's a big problem. It's wrong, and if you're one of these people who have been bullied, before we go on, I want to stop and change your perspective, because maybe you're actually still stuck in that phase where you're believing all those lies. So if that's you and you have a bit of a warped view about who you really are, I just want to say before we move on that actually you need to change your perspective and see yourself the way God sees you, because he says this about you. He says that you are loved, and there's actually nothing you can do to change God's love for you. There's nothing you can do to feel like you don't deserve it anymore. We're having a bit of a party here. I don't know if you guys have noticed. But that's because he's excited about that you are loved by God. But also that you are a child of God. And that means that, if your own family is a little bit not quite great, God actually says that you are a child of God. And he's your Father, and he is a fantastic one who won't let you down. He also says that you are chosen, and that means that you weren't actually just a mistake, but that you were handpicked on purpose by him, and he has a plan for you. He also says that he is for you. He's not against you. And that sometimes I feel like our view of God is that he's this big scary monster and that he's going to strike us down with a lightning bolt if we stuff up. But that's not at all what he's like. He's actually for you, and he's journeying with you. And when you're going through something tough, his heart's breaking with you guys. Also, he has a plan for you. And he has a plan for you that isn't full of mess-ups and mistakes and bullying and hurt. But his plan is for something awesome and fantastic, a hope and a future that you can't even dream of. So if that's you, I want you to claim those realities instead. If the creator of the whole universe says all of these things about us, then why would we believe whatever some random stranger at work or some bully at school or some stranger in our sports team even says to us? Why would we give their words so much weight to the point that it would affect who we think we are and the way we view ourselves? There's so many different angles of bullying like we just saw, but there's one that actually all of us can relate to, and it's actually the one that's most common and links to all of them, and that is the sticks and stones will break your bones, but words will never hurt me. The whole thing of words and verbal bullying, and that's what I want us to address today. As we've looked at, we can see that words do hurt, they do stick, they do leave lasting scars, and they can really shape our identity. But there's an upside, and that is that words can actually bring healing. They can lead people to hope, and that is where we as a whole church come in, and this is where it gets exciting. You see, as Jesus followers, we don't have a choice just to, if we feel like it and if we have time, then to be nice to somebody and use our words wisely. He actually has called us to do that and to speak words of encouragement to people, to speak hope and healing and not hurt and pain. That's actually what we're called to do. And if you're not a Jesus follower and you think you get off the hook, you don't, because you should know the value of what's right and wrong, and you should also know the value of how important it is to speak encouragement into somebody else's life. And none of us would want to be bullied, so why would we bully anyone else, right? So sometimes you think about it and you think, well, that's cool because I'm not actually bullying anyone. I think I'm using my words wisely and not really hurting anyone, but there's actually something we all do and we don't realize it, and it's actually hurtful and damaging. Have you ever been caught up when someone comes up to you and they're gossiping about someone else and that person at work or whatever, and they're like, oh, they're just so annoying, and have you seen they do this? Oh, it's such a drain, and whatever it might be. And you're like, oh, yeah, I reckon. And maybe you don't even know the person, or maybe you're not really bothered either way, but you sort of just nod and go along because, you don't want to cause a scene and it's not really a big deal to you. Or maybe someone comes and be like, oh my goodness, have you heard this? And they share a rumor with you, and then you go and spread it too, even though it's not even about you and you don't even know if it's fact. Have you ever been in the room where someone is speaking down to someone else? They're actually just verbally just calling them out for a piece of this and a piece of that, and they're actually just belittling them right in front of you, and yet you didn't even do anything about it. I think all of us have been in that situation, and we don't even realize it, but we were actually being a bully. We've all been there, and of course we didn't mean to, but if you think about it, we played a part, and even though we didn't even say those words ourselves, we were bystanders. We were a part of it. We sat there, we listened, and we did nothing about it. And that's actually considered bullying. So there's a quote that I really like, and it says this. It says, all that is necessary for evil to prosper is a few good people to do nothing. Isn't that cool? It's as simple as that. For bullying to continue, for bullying to thrive and spread, all that has to do in this church is for a few good people to actually sit back and do nothing, just be bystanders. If you ask yourself, if you were in any of those situations, how do you think God would want you to respond when somebody's gossiping, when you're sharing a rumor, or when you see someone just belittling someone else? I think we would know the answer of how God would want us to respond in those situations. But are you currently doing anything about bullying, or are you just thinking, oh yeah, it's to do with kids in school and we all go through that? Because I think we actually need to change our attitude and our perspective and make a stand. There's a verse in Proverbs 12 verse 18, and I think we have it up here. It says, the words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. And if you think about the words you're currently using, are they words that are just reckless and come out of your mouth without you thinking about it, that actually could pierce like a sword to somebody else and just really cut them to the heart? Or are you being wise and actually speaking words that bring healing? I've heard that saying, hurt people hurt people. meaning like if you're hurt, you're so angry, you want to go and hurt others. And that's how we end up speaking recklessly, words that pierce someone. And I get that because, you know, when I've been hurt, I want revenge. And sometimes I'm like, man, I'm going to make them hurt like I hurt so they know exactly how it feels. And I have this whole thing in my head of what I'm going to do and how it's going to pan out. But that's worthless. That just keeps the cycle going. And that's not at all what God's called us to. It just actually wastes our own time more than anybody else's. So luckily, there's a bright side to this whole bullying thing. And it's a lot to do with our choice. And it's actually something we can choose to do. Like this verse, we can choose to speak healing or reckless words that just come out of our mouth without us even thinking about it. So there's 4 things we can choose to do. And if we all choose to do this at a church, as a church, it could just be the coolest thing that will ever happen to this generation. So first of all, decide today that we will make a stand, and a stand against bullying. Not even participate in gossip, and not even participate in banter. Banter is something that I think everyone loves and enjoys. It's like when you're having like a joke between your friends, and it can kind of go a little too far. And I know the Spark guys are great at this. They're all smiling, I see it. But it's, you know, there's always going to be something said as a joke or in jest as a banter with your mates at work and in your family and like in your sports teams and stuff. And that's cool. But banter actually has a tendency to just escalate. Just goes from here to here real fast. And sometimes it actually just goes too far. And it can quickly go from something funny and lighthearted and mocking someone to just being like straight up mean. We're actually just taking it from laughs to bully real fast. And sometimes even worse, you don't even realize that you've crossed that line, and the person, your mate who's receiving this banter, all of a sudden is actually getting bullied. They feel miserable about it, but they don't want to stand up and say something because then they're that dude who can't take a joke, right? And that's not cool either. And so I think, yeah, banter's cool and everything, but sometimes we have to think, are we encouraging people and speaking words that build people up just as much as we're bantering with them? And do we actually know when to stop bantering and when, like, the line is crossed, when we're actually hurting someone's feelings? So I want us to decide today that we'll take a stand, not to gossip, and not to banter to the point where it actually is offensive and hurting someone, especially one of our mates. The second thing I want us to do is realize that, our words have power. There's power in our words. So we can decide if we're going to let that power be a bad thing or a good thing. Ephesians 4 verse 29 is a verse, and it says, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. It's such a cool verse because it's about, don't let just random reckless words come out of your mouth, but only speak words that is going to build somebody else up. That's such a good rule to live by. If what you're saying is not building others up, think about it, okay? What are you saying most of the time? The words that come out of your mouth wherever you are they words that build each other up more, or are they on the other side? Because we want to be constantly speaking things that are building people up and adding value. Otherwise, there's actually no point in even saying them. And if we think about words, like words are used to teach people, to bless people, to love people. And words have stopped wars. Even God used words to speak our whole world into existence. So if there's such power in words, why do we just let ours ramble out meaninglessly and actually it's ridiculous. So we need to realize that there's power of our words and use them to build someone up, not break someone down. The third thing is that I want us to decide enough is enough and to speak to someone about it. So this is for if you are currently right now going through bullying, or you have for so long that it's actually built a wall around your feelings and you've just sort of withdrawn, well then you've got to decide today that you don't have to live like that anymore, that enough is enough, and It's not just part of life. You don't have to go through that, and you can speak to someone about it. And you can decide today's the day you're going to speak to someone about it. And straight after this, you can come and chat to me, or you can go on our website, you can email someone, or there's loads of resources in the foyer as well. So today could be the day that it's enough for you. The fourth thing, lastly, what I want us to do is to be a church that is known for speaking life-giving words. Let's be a church that actually has zero tolerance with bullying. That all of us can be like, nah, that doesn't happen here. That's not how it goes down. We don't gossip like that. And as soon as someone comes to you and starts being like, oh, did you know that? You just say, hey, nah, I don't need to know about that. And you just stop it there, and that's it. Imagine if all of us did that, then we wouldn't feel guilty and awkward about being the one who's like, oh, actually, I don't really want to talk about the person like that. Just say it how it is. And if we all did that, it would be the coolest thing ever. There's actually an organisation in New Zealand, and they're called Pink Shirt, and they run Pink Shirt Day in May. And they are about speaking up against bullying. And their motto is, speak up, stand together, and stop bullying. It's so simple, and I reckon if our church embraced that motto of speaking up, standing together, and stop bullying, it would be the coolest thing ever, because that would be that. And what we got to do is make it practical. So not only will we sort of stop when we see gossiping or banter going too far or anything, but we also look around our building, and if we see someone in our building or our community alone or isolated or quite withdrawn from themselves or something, then it's our job to sort of step into that and speak those words of healing and speak those words of encouragement and sort of, change it for them. Don't just see it and be like, oh, that's a shame. We actually have to act on it. Can you imagine how cool our church would be if people were like, oh, Gracegate, yeah, that's the place that's known for speaking life-giving words, where people are valued, where they belong, and where people just are thriving there because they're the best versions of themselves. It would be such a cool thing to know, and it would ripple effect into our community, and it would ripple effect into wherever we went to work or wherever it might be, and it would just be the coolest thing. So if we go back to the movie of this little guy called Augie from Wonder, from the movie, like many of us, in the movie he finds himself just totally unempowered in this bullying thing. He's getting bullied by people at his school, and in that time he's just like, he feels small, he's socially unequipped, he's just doesn't have any power to get himself out of this situation of bullying. And what he needed is this thing called positive peer pressure. So usually when we think of peer pressure, it's actually a negative thing. It's when one of our mates is making us do something that we don't really want to do or something like that. But positive peer pressure is what he needed, and it's exactly what he got. So in the movie, August, he needed his classmates to be positive peer pressure and just to step up and stop the bullying. And that's exactly what happened. That with their strong values and courageous act of kindness, they stand up for him, and they eventually, in the movie, they stop the bullying, and because they stand up for him and start protecting him, he gets liberated from bullying, and his liberators actually, they feel free and awesome as well. And he says this quote in the movie, which is so cool. So little Augie's been bullied this whole time, and then he says, and now that they'd protected me, I was different to them. It was like now I would become one of them. They all called me little dude now, even the jocks, so even the cool people. And it's such a cool line in the movie because it went from him being bullied and called all these names to the only thing that actually made a difference was now he had a squad. He had people around him supporting him, people like a family, just like us, and their words actually liberated him and set him free from bullying, and he felt protected and part of it. And my hope and prayer is that God can actually use us to be a family and a community that can be like the kids in the movie, that can just take a courageous stand and have this positive peer pressure for all of us, and that we can become the support and the network and the community that we're needed. So when we're feeling stuck and when we're feeling like we can't get ourselves out of this situation and we're so far in, that we can use our words to build somebody up, and we can use our words to speak healing and encouragement into someone else's life. And, you know, life isn't always rainbows and unicorns. It's the real facts. And maybe it's just for a season. And you might feel like, my goodness, you've been in that season forever. But it is just a season. And that's why we're here to support each other. Today, maybe you're thinking you are one of these people. You've been constantly bullied. You're just broken down. And you just feel like one of those broken crayons that has no worth or value anymore. But as you can see over here, these broken crayons, last time I checked, they actually still color the exact same. And you guys might be broken and you might be hurt. You might feel like a broken crayon, but you can still create something beautiful with your words, and your words can actually heal. So the band are going to sing a song, and invite them up, and they're going to be singing a song that speaks about that you made me brave. And it's such a cool song that I'd like you guys to stand as well and claim, because it says that as your love crashes over me, wave after wave, it says, you are for me, not against me. You have made a way for all of us to enter. And so no matter what you're going through, God's already made that way for you. So why don't we stand and claim that you make me brave.